Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, ¿cómo les va? Bueno, aquí estamos nuevamente. Adrián Braga, ¿qué tal? Gracias por aparecerte allí. Tenemos una conferencia de pre-lanzamiento, del lanzamiento de mañana, Axiom-1 en un cohete, en un vehículo, Falcon 9 de la compañía SpaceX. Darien Hernández está, teóricamente, debería estar físicamente allá. Hace un rato que no hablo con él, pero se supone que debe estar físicamente en la conferencia. Nosotros estamos acreditados también, esta vez online. Estamos vía teléfono. Bueno, confirmado. Darien está allí físicamente en la conferencia. Esta foto la acaba de publicar, me la acaba de mandar por interno, no sé si la publicó Darien o no. Eh, Esto es en la conferencia de prensa allí. Como a todo, dice, bueno, por ahora, bárbaro. Dani dice, Lucas Quiroga, te busqué a ver si te cruzaba en termas el fin del pasado. No, no, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué las termas? Yo no dije que iba a estar en las termas. Saludos a todos, dice Guillermo Alfaro Dimas, gracias, muchas gracias. Estamos a la espera, estamos conectados vía teléfono todavía, no tenemos novedades. Escucharemos la conferencia de prensa, sí, bueno, es la idea, Adrián Braga. Por las termas MotoGP, termas de Río Hondo, dice Lucas. No, no, la verdad es un viaje largo, pero no puedo hacerlo. No. La idea es que sí, que escuchen la conferencia, vamos a tratar de hacer algunos comentarios, no a traducirla. Eh, Teóricamente ya debería haber comenzado, estamos a 4 minutos pasados de la hora. Es más, ni siquiera llamé a Darien porque sabía que estábamos muy justos en la hora. Entonces, estoy a la espera porque teóricamente estoy conectado vía telefónica ya hace 6 minutos y no tengo ni siquiera la música de la espera, que la tuve hace un rato. Ahora volvió. No sé si, a ver. Sí, volvió la música. Ahí volvió. Se ve que me escucharon. ¿Sabes el pronóstico del tiempo para mañana? Dice Adrián Braga. Bueno, cuando miré hoy, estaba un 80% eh, positivo. O sea, había un 80% de probabilidades de que sí se pudiera lanzar la misión. Bueno, estamos viendo imágenes de los 4 astronautas civiles que se dirigen. Allí tenemos a López Alegría. Y el escudo este me encanta, el escudo este, el parche de la misión. Comienza un nuevo capítulo en la era espacial, y es cierto.
Axiom Space's AX-1 pre-launch briefing. We're excited about today and the upcoming launch. Moments ago, the leaders at NASA, SpaceX, and Axiom Space met for the pre-launch for the launch readiness review, the LRR. And today they'll discuss a little bit about what was.
Dice que hicieron las autoridades de NASA y de SpaceX hicieron lo que se llama la revisión previa. Están presentando a quienes están: Derek Hartmann de Axiom, Dana Weigel de NASA, Angela Hart, que es administradora del programa comercial, Benjamin Reed, es muy conocido de SpaceX, director senior, y Lance Wheeler. Derek de Axiom. Van a ver que las voces quedan separadas, no están sincronizadas, porque estamos conectados vía telefónica, entonces el audio no va a quedar con lo que decimos. Las imágenes están llegando con un poco de retraso.
Typically been a single individual as part of a 3-person crew, so a single private citizen and then 2 government astronauts. In the case of the AX-1 mission, very different in that the entire crew are unaffiliated with any government. Our commander is an Axiom employee.
Bueno, dice que en este caso dice muy atípico a lo que sucede en la Estación Espacial, que todas las tripulaciones dependen de sus gobiernos. Acá no dependen de ningún país. Tiene una tripulación internacional. Tenemos planificados una serie de experimentos. 25 para ser exactos. Those entities in order to design his payload science that he's doing during his mission. And that's another unique aspect of this mission, is that the suite of activities are dependent on the individual's interest. So we've worked with them over the past year and a half or so to build a very robust and significant suite of experiments and activities that we're going to do during this 10-day mission. And we are laser focused on that mission. Of course, the priority, as always, is to keep the crew safe, to successfly execute the mission. Dice que obviamente, si bien lo más interesante son los experimentos de ciencia, dice lo más importante es la seguridad de la tripulación.
The company was formed in order to build the next commercial space station.
La compañía fue hecha, dice, para poder hacer una estación espacial comercial, que esa es la idea de Axiom. De aquí, o sea, desde el 2024 al 2030 van a comenzar a ampliar la estación espacial con sus partes de acción para luego separarse y ser una estación autónoma. Bueno, lo que van a hacer es demostrar las capacidades de la compañía Axiom, que ya se presentó y están aprobadas, pero ahora toca la parte de práctica, ¿no?
So it's an honor and a privilege to be here today. I appreciate everybody's interest, and especially to be taking part in this press conference with our tremendous partners in this endeavor, both NASA and SpaceX. And it's been
muy contentos estamos de poder hacer esta misión y esta conferencia. Gracias por haber venido. Bueno, sobre Benji dijo, va a presentar ahora la palabra Benjamin Braid, que es quien va a hablar en base a SpaceX, que es el director senior de Programas Espaciales Humanos de la compañía. No, Dina Weigel dice que va a hablar. En realidad, le pasaron la palabra a Dina Weigel, de NASA, administradora del programa de la Estación Espacial.
Let's see, the space station team is really excited for this first of its kind mission and also to be kind of on the leading edge of helping to commercialize low Earth orbit. Very exciting for us to be partnering.
Gracias, Marco. Gracias por el comentario.
Angeles team and also with the Axiom and SpaceX teams. It's been really busy for us on board the vehicle. Over the last few weeks, we've had 2 U.S. spacewalks.
Estamos muy ocupados en las últimas semanas en el vehículo. Está diciendo que Mark Van de Hay volvió a casa, dice, en una Soyuz hace unas semanas. Está diciendo que, bueno, tiene un récord de 355 días para cualquier americano.
After the Axiom mission, actually during the mission, if it launches on time, we will have 1 Russian EVA, and then not long after that, we've got another Russian EVA. As you know, right after the Axiom mission, we'll be launching
una misión, una EVA, una EVA,
about a 5-day handover on board with each other, and then we'll bring Crew 3 home in May, mid-May.
Va a haber una caminata espacial y luego viene Boeing con la OF2. Esa misión de Boeing que está tan retrasada, ¿no? Tenemos un montón de actividades que vienen de aquí al futuro. Y la seguridad siempre es nuestra prioridad más importante.
The Axiom mission itself will dock to our Node 2 Zenith port, and their docked portion of the mission will be around 8 days long.
Dice que van a estar 8 días de los 10.
The research that he was talking about is sponsored through our Space Station National Lab. And so this is a great opportunity for us to be able to open up the space station's world-class research facilities to a whole new user community. So that's really
bueno, dice que es una muy buena oportunidad de la Estación Espacial de abrir sus puertas a una nueva comunidad.
They're getting ready for the mission. They're really excited to welcome the Axiom crew on board. And excited to get to be part of this first-time historic mission. You know, that was
muy entusiasmado de ser parte de esta parte de la misión.
I mean, this is pretty exciting for them too.
Dice que también es un entusiasmo muy grande para ellos.
You know, folks always ask us where people are sleeping on board, so I figured I'd go ahead and just throw that tidbit out there in anticipation of being asked. Similar to what we do when we have direct handovers and extra people on board, we go and kind of look at the real estate and what's going on to figure out where to best put people. So we'll have 1 crew member in Dragon, 1 in our airlock. We'll have 2 people in Columbus. One of them will be we've got a new crew quarters that we flew up, so 1 will be there. The rest will be kind of in a camp-out configuration, just like what we do with our crew during direct.
Bueno, estaba diciendo dónde van a estar durmiendo los astronautas. Dice que van a estar 2 en la Dragon, 2 en otro módulo, en la Armonía.
Really hard to put this mission together.
Dice que Axiom ha trabajado muy fuerte en esta misión, junto con ellos, con NASA, ¿no?
And then all of the onboard activities are new, including integration with our international partners. So it's really been a really large team effort to get ready for it. I think the teams are ready. They're ready to go launch and go fly this mission. So
el equipo está pronto, así que bueno, vamos a volar en esta misión.
Next we'll hear from Angela Hart, NASA Commercial LEO Program Manager. Yes, first I want to thank everyone.
Angela Hart es la administradora del programa comercial de órbita baja de la NASA.
Really appreciating you being here at Kennedy Space Center, braving the weather this afternoon, hoping that'll be
Está
able to
agradeciendo a la
shine a
gente
little
que
clearer
está
up for us
físicamente
tomorrow.
allí, que están
So, and
luchando
glad
contra
that
el
there's a lot of
clima, ¿no?
interest in this.
Tuvieron
As everybody has
una lluvia
noted, this is a
muy
historic event.
fuerte hace
It
unas
is,
horas.
we are super happy to be here to report our readiness and our readiness to move forward with launch tomorrow. This mission really represents a significant milestone for our plans for the development of a sustainable LEO economy. It is one step
Es un paso muy
forward in the
importante
overall strategy
para
that
poder
NASA
llevar
supports
adelante
so
lo que
to
proponen de la
stimulate
economía
demand by utilizing
comercial de la
science
órbita baja terrestre.
activities. This mission, which we call a private astronaut mission, and you may have heard the acronym PAM used sometime when people are talking about it, is one of many that we hope to continue to have. They are going to be conducting additional commercial activities that we've not done before on ISS, so the further use of ISS to strengthen our industry partnerships to continue to do more and more commercial activities on station.
Bueno, dice que van a estar haciendo
Is
actividades que no
also,
se
as
habían
Derek
hecho
mentioned,
antes en
a
la
stepping
Estación Espacial
stone toward
Internacional.
their demonstration of activities that they will use as they move forward in the development of commercial LEO destinations, which is a prime goal of my program. And so
Y eso es
we're
parte de lo que
super
van a estar
excited to see
haciendo con
this.
las actividades comerciales
We
de la
know we're
órbita
going to learn a
baja.
lot from this first mission, working
Vamos a
side by
aprender mucho de
side
esta
in a
misión.
very aggressive schedule on orbit during
Y
those 8 days,
tienen
between
una,
the NASA astronauts and the
calendario
private
de tiempo en
astronauts.
estos 8
We're
días, dice,
committed
muy
to
ambicioso.
continue these future private astronaut missions, and we are currently working to finalize our contract with Axiom for the second private astronaut mission that is
Bueno, y están finalizando el contrato ya para
and
la
then we
segunda
also
misión de
plan to
Axiom.
put out a solicitation, an open solicitation in this year for follow-on private astronaut missions after we go through our lessons learned on this first mission. So very, very excited to see this happen. This started
Muy
before I
entusiasmado
took
de ver
over
que
as a
esto
commercial LEO
suceda.
development program manager, and really excited to see this vision
Dice
that started
Ángela
on
Hart.
ISS come to pass. Want to thank real quickly all the teams, both NASA, Axiom, and SpaceX. We've had to work through a lot of different new processes, new procedures,
Todos
new
tenemos que,
policies,
todos,
to
dice,
allow
tenemos que
the
empezar a
expansion of
trabajar ahora
items
con
on
nuevos
commercial activities on
procedimientos
station,
por la
and
actividad
really
comercial.
proud of the team to make that happen.
Y
Still
bueno,
lots of work that needs to be done to continue to formulate our strategy on how we'll move forward in developing the commercial economy. We're already
bueno,
seeing lots and lots
dicho
of
esto, dice,
interest.
tenemos que
This is
seguir
a super
trabajando en
exciting time. If you haven't
desarrollar
had the opportunity to see the pictures, and you'll be
cómo
able to see
vamos a
them
seguir
possibly
moviéndonos en el
later,
futuro para seguir
seeing
desarrollando
both
las
vehicles
actividades
out there at the
comerciales.
pad, is extremely exciting for all of us. Very busy, very exciting time to be partnering with the industry, and I have very, very high hopes for where we're moving forward for commercialization. So with that, I'm appreciative and honored to be here with you today, and really looking forward to the mission tomorrow. Thanks, Bettina.
Thank you, Angela, and I agree. If you have an opportunity to look at the pad and see those rockets up there, it is an amazing moment, and it really emphasizes where we are in the space industry today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Benji Reed, the Senior Director of Human Spaceflight Programs.
Benjamin Reed va a hablar
Thank you,
ahora.
Bettina. First of all, good afternoon here in Florida. It's great to be back here. And
Director Senior de los Programas Espaciales Humanos
we will
de
be
SpaceX.
flying Michael, Larry, Eitan, and Mark to the space station. Has been talked about quite a bit already. And then when their mission is over, bring them back home safely to their families. We've said it before, and we'll say it again. It's a sacred honor. We are truly honored to be part of this transportation service that we provide to Axiom in their endeavor to build space stations, to continue to expand what we want to do in space. This is all part of making humans a spacefaring civilization, of taking life on this planet across the stars eventually. And it gives me chills just to think about this is another step in that process and another first, right? We again talked about, Derek already mentioned it, but this is a first of sending an all-commercial crew.
Dice, esto es un primero, este es un primer paso, la primera vez que se manda una tripulación totalmente comercial a la Estación Espacial Internacional. Dice, es un paso más, había dicho unos momentos antes, en este viaje a las estrellas.
And that's pretty darn cool as far as I'm concerned. And they get and of course they've trained to be in Dragon. They've trained to be astronauts aboard Dragon. Spend the time going up and coming down, but really
se han entrenado las Dragon, obviamente, ¿no?
Doing science, doing research, And that's really great. And I think it bodes
Y bueno,
very
lo que van a
well
hacer es
to this
ciencia
level
y
of
investigación.
preparation go into this mission as we look towards the future, again,
Y
of
hubo mucha
all of us
preparación en
being
esta
able to
misión,
live and
así
work in
miramos
space. I just
hacia el
think that's
futuro,
awesome.
en todo lo que viene.
You know, tomorrow at 11:17 a.m. here, Florida time, we'll be getting ready to launch them. The good news is that Dragon and Falcon, as Eric mentioned,
Bueno, mañana
are in good shape.
vamos a estar
They're on
lanzándolos a
track
las
right now
11:17 de la
to be
mañana,
ready for
hora del
that launch.
este. La parte buena es
Kind of
que
looking at the weather for those of us
el
who were maybe
Falcon
trapped
y
in our
la
cars an
cápsula
hour
están en
ago,
perfectas
watching these
condiciones.
winds come through. But
Independiente.
the good news is the weather's starting to look a little bit better. I'll let the
Bueno,
actual
y a pesar
local
del
weather
tiempo
get
malo
talked
que
about here in
tuvimos
a
hace un
second,
rato,
but
dice
I can at least
el tiempo va a estar bueno
the
mañana.
ascent and abort track weather. And overall, that's starting to trend a little bit better too, right? We've got a number of points where winds have gone down under the threshold, and which also looks good for lightning and, of course, waves as well as those winds go down.
Bueno,
it's
hay
looking really
todavía,
good.
esperemos que el
Again, it's an honor,
viento calme un
to be
poco
part of
más,
this,
en fin, que no nos
to
molesten
be
las
here
descargas
again with a lot of
eléctricas.
friends and colleagues from many years of work.
Y bueno,
Ever since my first day at SpaceX, I've been working here with Angela.
dice,
And I can
bueno,
attest
y
to
aquí hay
all of you
compañeros con
great
los que
folks
hemos trabajado
that we get to be here and be part of
desde
this.
hace años.
And finally, of course, a big thank you as part of that length of partnership to NASA and for helping us all to
Y está agradeciendo
do
los
this
lazos
ultimate goal,
que
and to
tienen
the
con NASA.
45th Space Wing for everything that they do. And
Y,
finally, a shout out
y
to
a la,
everybody
y
at
al ala
SpaceX, all of
45
their families,
de la Fuerza
all the work
Espacial,
that they do.
que justamente es quien está colaborando con el tema
Thank
del
you.
clima ahora.
Thank you. Back to you, Bettina.
Thank you, Benji. And next will be Brian Sizak, Launch Weather Officer for the 45th Weather Squadron.
Bueno, aquí me cambiaron.
And I see a lot of umbrellas and rain jackets in the audience right now. And the good news is that the weather tomorrow and through the weekend will be a lot better than the weather that we saw today. Obviously, we had some thunderstorms.
Bueno, va a estar mejor el clima,
that reached
dice,
the severe
en los días
threshold.
que
We got some
vienen.
wind gusts over 50 knots here at Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. But high pressure will be rolling in tomorrow and through the weekend and looking a lot better weather-wise here at Kennedy Space Center. So
Llegó a los 70 kilómetros por hora, las rayas allí.
and you can see a lot of activity over Central Florida right now, some thunderstorms moving through the state. And all of those are associated with a cold front that is pushing through the area. And what that is going to
Bueno, está
allow is
diciendo
for
que el
much
tiempo está
cooler
asociado a un
and
frente
drier air
frío, ¿no?
push into the region as we head into tomorrow and through the weekend, as well as high pressure will move over the area. So really no lightning launch commit criteria concerns. Really,
Si alguien tiene una
mainly,
pregunta,
just keeping an eye on some of
ya.
those things. Why don't we look at the forecast for the primary launch day tomorrow? Just a 10% probability of violation, mainly just tracking some of those northwest winds around 15 to 20
Moses, tu
miles per
pregunta
hour.
ya está
But overall,
respondida.
we are looking good. I do want to
Los
emphasize,
módulos que van a
we're
agregar
primarily
a
focused
la
on
estación
the launch
espacial,
conditions here
en
at
realidad,
Kennedy Space Center, but we're also working with the SpaceX team.
esos módulos que van a agregar a la estación espacial, en realidad van a seguir usándolos después de que se separen de la estación espacial. O sea, Axiom le va a agregar módulos y luego cuando la estación espacial se descarte, van a ser utilizados. O sea, no es que no van a servir para nada. A partir del 2000, o sea, a partir del momento en que la estación espacial deje de funcionar, teóricamente en el 2030, lo que va a quedar en órbita allí va a ser la parte de Axiom, la parte de la estación espacial de Axiom, que van a empezar a montar a partir del 2026.
Thank you so much. Well, with that, we'll start taking questions from our reporters. If you are on the phone, please press *1 to indicate you have a question. And we'll start here with Chelsea. We'll wait. Can you wait for the microphone 1 moment so everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea goes space.com. My question is for Derek. Obviously, this is a very different mission from a lot of the other private astronaut missions that we've seen, even just in the last year. I'm curious what you think that will be, and how do you think that will influence the future of these missions? And I feel like this might also go to Dana or perhaps Angela as well, as I'm curious how this will also look in the future on the space station and in low Earth orbit. Will we be seeing this kind of thing routinely, and how will that affect dynamics on the space station and how operations actually continue through the station's tenure?
Okay, great question. And you've probably heard our commander, Mike L.A., talk a little bit about this in terms of the standards that he and his crew want to set. I mean, they want to be the best possible private astronauts that you can imagine, and they've trained in that way. They're very well prepared. They understand where they fit in the big scheme of things. They want to be good house guests, if you will. And really, Mike L.A.'s previous experience, his vast experience, including as a commander of the International Space Station, helped us tremendously in order to determine how to be good house guests and how to minimize disruption to the International Space Station crew on the NASA side, who all have work to do, obviously. So we've talked a lot about that internally. What are the behaviors that we need to model? What are the things that we can do to prepare better in order to be the most self-sufficient we can? Of course, when we arrive, their crew will brief our Axiom 1 crew on first emergency procedures and then kind of an overall, this is station, this is how we do our daily lives, this is where you'll take your hygiene breaks, this is where you'll have meals with the crew and so forth. So there'll be a series of briefings when we first arrive, and after that, the Axiom crew will go off to execute their timelines. Mike L.A. will be a resource, of course, since he's been there before, and he'll help our crew in any way he needs to. And in addition, NASA has made available to us time on their station crew's part as well to help in any way they can. So our goal going into this was really to set the bar very high and to demonstrate to everybody involved and the world that this is a realistic thing to go do, that it can be positive, that it can be impactful, and from an Axiom perspective, we want to do this several more times, many more times. So it's on the mind of both the crew and our Axiom ground team to do this the very best way that we can.
Let me just add that from my standpoint, when you talk about previous citizens who've flown to space station, and we usually refer to them as spaceflight participants, historically they've flown up on the Soyuz and they've come over to the U.S. segment, but their interest is usually in two different things. One is using our cupola so they can get great photos out of the window, and the other is using email. So really, our experience to date is really, really limited. And so here we're taking on not just one crew member, or two. We've had, two guests before. But they're really there just very temporarily. And so they really don't need to train. They don't need to understand a lot. This is completely different. So here we've got 4 people who will be living and working on board our vehicle. Our crew members go through 2 years of initial training when we first select them, and then they go through off and on
Están
training
hablando un
throughout
poco
the
de,
years,
le,
and
le
then
pregunto
finally
sobre las
culminates in
actividades
intensive
y
flight-specific training for like
bueno,
a year and a half.
ahora
And so this is very different.
Ángela
for us.
está
So
diciendo,
now the challenge to us is to figure out how we can make this lean
Dana,
but arm
de,
the Axiom
de-
crew
de-
and
del
the
tiempo que
Axiom
tienen,
team
hace
so
2
they
años que
can
están
be
entrenándose
successful on board.
articulaciones para
We're all
esto.
going to learn a lot from it. But again, I mean, they are
Pero que tienen
living
que
and
aprender
working
mucho igual
on board,
todavía
our
en la
segment.
compañía
Very
Soyuz.
different from our standpoint compared to what we've seen before.
I would just add that both my colleagues have talked about, how we're ensuring the safety and that the ISS operations aren't really impacted. From our point of view, we're really looking at this in terms of what do commercial missions want to look like? What are the customer needs? What are the markets that are interested? And so we're going to learn a lot from that. We all mentioned a lot of the hard work that got to get us here. A lot of that was to ensure that we did not impact station and that we did all the right things to make sure that happened in
Bueno, que obviamente dice que
proper way.
estudian cada una
But
de,
there
la-
are
de
a
las,
number of
de las
pathfinders that are on this
pruebas de
mission to
ciencia que
see
van a
how
hacer, de las
they
investigaciones,
operate.
para no
Actually,
impactar
we're doing a
tampoco
number of tech
negativamente,
demos that
o
lead
sea,
toward
están
their
estudiando
commercial
continuamente eso, para ver
destinations.
cómo impactan
And I
cada una de las
expect when we
cosas
have
en,
this
en la
successful mission, we're
articulación
going
y
to
en
see
el
an outpouring
funcionamiento
of
de la
other
estación espacial.
interested parties that are going to be interested in what they can do on the ISS. Our offices really works really closely with headquarters to determine, what's that right mix of what you can do on a government institutional facility versus a private facility, which will look much different when we get to commercial destinations. But we do want to be able to support this effort as much as we can so we can continue to build this demand so that when our industry partners are ready to have their free
Bueno,
flying
que
destinations.
obviamente ahí se están
They will have
usando
the customers and
facilidades
markets
públicas,
there
o
to
sea, del
support those,
Estado,
so that NASA
dice, pero
can be,
queremos ver
you know,
qué,
one of many
hacer lo
customers, which is our
máximo para las
ultimate goal.
empresas
So
para que
there are
puedan
a lot of
desarrollar
things that
justamente
we'll be
el
watching
tema
and we have
comercial,
been
¿no?
doing in order to make sure those commercial activities can occur and how to do them the right way.
Thank you. Marcia?
Associated Press, probably for Derek or Dana. Are they taking everything they need with them for the 10-day flight with them in this Dragon, or has their food, clothes already been staged up there? I wasn't sure how that's all going in their science stuff. And what happens after Sunday if you're still on the ground?
Let's see, I'll start, and then I'll see if Derek has anything to add. There's a combination of both. For example, some of the food and there's some common supplies, hygiene supplies, and other just common use items if you want to borrow some wipes or office supplies. It doesn't make sense for Axiom to fly up, you know, small bits and pieces like that. So we kind of have a mix. So we worked together and went through all of the different supplies, and we're very specific about what.
Please stand by for operator help.
And of course, there are also crew preferences, and in those cases, Axiom had all those covered for their crew.
It's been an interesting evolution because when we started a year and a half, 2 years ago, our model was to be completely self-sufficient.
Thank you. Hello, this is the operator. Are you signaling for help?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was a mistake.
I'm going to put you now back into the conference.
Thank you.
With NASA, you know, what makes sense? Does it make sense for Axiom to fly and certify a dedicated oxygen tank on Dragon? Well, the answer was clearly no. We could depend on the ISS resources for that function and that capability. And then same concept for carbon dioxide scrubbing. So we gradually evolved into, I think, a real sweet spot where we provide the things that Dana mentioned, the clothes and the transit food, for example, and then all the basic necessities that the crew needs for that transit period. But then we depend on the ISS for things like consumables and oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide scrubbing, and so forth. And we're able to establish values for those things and then collaborate on how the exchange looked. So it's certainly something that evolved over time.
What happens after Sunday if you haven't launched?
Oh, you're asking about launching. So right now, I think, as you know, Artemis is working really hard towards a plan to pick back up with
Le preguntaron sobre el lanzamiento
on
y
Monday.
Artemis.
We are in constant conversation with them. The SpaceX team is working very closely with
Dice, estamos trabajando muy cerca
range teams and also with
con el
the
equipo de Artemis,
team,
del
and
SLS.
so we're both going to talk. There are a lot of different conditions we're both looking at overall to figure out how to best meet all the program's needs, and so those are still discussions that are in front of us. So I'm hoping that our weather friend over there comes through and makes it easier for us, but we'll have to have those discussions if for some reason we don't fly by the 10th. Chris?
Hi, Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight for Benji and Dana. Benji, first time since 1985 two crew flights are flying off the same pad in the same month. What have you put in place to make sure that you can look at everything from Endeavour before Freedom is ready to fly later this month? And for Dana, can you talk a little bit more about that training element for the Axiom 1 crew? Is it more akin to like the sortie flights?
Bueno, está hablando sobre los dos lanzamientos tripulados que tienen en muy pocos días y la pregunta es para Benji. Y pidió si podía ampliar un poquito más sobre el entrenamiento. Es Chris de NASA Spaceflight.
Readiness. Excellent question, right? Super important that we are ready to fly, safe to fly. Again, take them there and bring them home safely. That's top priority.
Muy importante la pregunta de Chris.
To do that, we look at
sí,
our normal
estamos prontos
process,
para
how do we
volar
get ready for a launch? How do we get the vehicles
lanzar con
ready?
seguridad.
What does it take to make sure that we are going to fly everybody safely? And you look at that processes, and you look at those timelines and those processes, and you lay them together and make sure that this timing, as you mentioned, within a month, right, is going to work out. And we feel very good about our readiness to do that.
Nos sentimos muy bien, estamos muy prontos como para decir esos lanzamientos en un mes, uno de otro.
You lay in things like weather and whatnot, and of course we have to work on that. So we're really bugging you, but
Sí, sí, el clima es un tiempo.
It's a bad day to be a cloud and a bad day to be a weatherman. But but no, I think the reality is that you do have to take it seriously and think about that. But on the flip side, if you look at the number of launches we've done this year already,
Bueno, pero dice, si miramos la cantidad de lanzamientos que ya hemos hecho,
launches that we've done just in the last couple of years, it's pretty amazing to me to think that we're just under 2 years since we were sitting up here talking about Demo 2 and Flying Bob and Doug. And
es increíble, ¿no?
It really does blow my mind, to use the overused term, that in that sort of time we've now flown. This will be our 6th flight of humans.
En este tiempo ya hemos hecho 6 vuelos, dice, humanos. Dice,
so we're learning.
Estamos aprendiendo.
How to do it efficiently.
Y estamos aprendiendo cómo hacerlo eficientemente, ¿no?
Right, we never just assume that we know how to do this. So I think we're ready to go. We wouldn't be go as of our launch readiness review if we weren't ready to go. We looked closely at that ability, and as we've mentioned a number of other things, we are in close contact and daily, more than daily, with NASA teams on this interplay between the two missions. Because as important as Axiom 1 is, of course, Crew 4 is super important for keeping station crewed and working together. So we're ready, but we're keeping a very close eye on it, of course.
We're going to take a question from. Yeah, sure. Let's see. For our crew members, they've got to do a really wide range of activities on board, and so we have what we call specialist training flows, which is a pretty intensive degree of training in a certain area. Examples include spacewalks. How to use your spacesuit, how do you do spacewalks, robotics training, and then just maintenance of the vehicle. So if the oxygen system goes down, getting into a rack and replacing components. The toilet going down, for example, which happens a lot. It's a very popular piece of equipment. And so, so there's a really deep level of training required to do that, and it's very different from someone who's a guest. And so what we did early on is we took kind of a concept of operations and we said, what is day in the life for a private astronaut? What might they do? And so they'll be a user of the toilet, but if it breaks, our crew would go and fix it. Photography, video and photography is really important, so their training includes that. And so we kind of went through what are all the different things they need to do. They need to learn how to use our galley so they can prepare food. Hygiene is very unique in a microgravity environment, so they get hygiene training. And so there's a lot of daily living training, just so that they're comfortable and know how to kind of operate independently on board. The piece that's the same as what our crew does is what I'd call kind of the safety-related training, so emergency response and what to do if we have a major contingency on board the space station. And so that level of training and
está hablando sobre el entrenamiento de los astronautas y qué es lo que esperan que sea que necesitan hacer para este tipo de misiones. Sobre todo para las operaciones comerciales, que pueden no ser iguales a las que hacen actualmente, por las necesidades de qué es lo que necesitan hacer, ¿no? Entonces, la idea es hacer que ese entrenamiento sea específico para sus necesidades.
One of the advantages that Axiom has, and my team in particular, is that I, having worked for NASA for many years, I was able to recruit a lot of the people that did this training.
Yo he trabajado mucho para NASA y he podido reclutar gente a la NASA a través de
all
los
of the roles and responsibilities that
en todos los roles y responsabilidades.
So we were able to, again, collaborate with NASA relative to the ISS on what's the minimum requirements.
Y hemos podido trabajar junto con NASA justamente porque sabemos cuáles son los requerimientos.
Knows how to respond in the if those unlikely situations do occur, and then day to day, how do you do hygiene? How do you do your food?
Derek trabajó mucho tiempo en NASA, entonces por eso está diciendo eso, ¿no?
Outreach capabilities available on ISS, the cameras and such.
Él es el director de operaciones
de
la
Axiom
Space.
Media outreach and also just social outreach. How are we going to do Twitter on orbit? So we just focused on the things that our astronauts were going to do and made sure that they understand all the details of those. And as a fallback, again, our ace card is Mike L.A., who's been there and done it. And he's been a tremendous resource in the lead up to the mission, and we expect him to continue in that role on orbit. And on the SpaceX side, our crew, as Benji mentioned, spent a lot of time out at SpaceX headquarters in California, in L.A., and they learned how to work and operate safely inside the Dragon capsule. But L.A. and his pilot, Larry Connor, were given additional training required to actually navigate and operate the spacecraft. So they had additional training that the two mission specialists do not have. So bottom line, it was very specific and very focused on the basic needs of the crew and then the additional training that they needed to operate.
Bueno, está hablando de todo el entrenamiento que le han dado a la tripulación,
Derek, we're going to take now a question
que ha recibido
from
en
Our
las
first
instalaciones de
question
SpaceX.
comes from
Se
Jeff
refirió
Bell.
a Benjamin, que
Jeff?
estuvo supervisando todo eso. Y que
Hi,
los
this
han
is Jeff Bell
entrenado
from Space News. The question for Benji, you mentioned
justamente
the
en todo
abort
lo que
weather was trending
necesitan.
better. I wonder if you could quantify that in any way, what you're seeing in terms of conditions and what you're expecting to see on Friday morning. Thanks.
Bueno, ¿cómo van a estar las condiciones de tiempo, de clima?
That's a great question, and actually, I don't have all of that detail in front of me. I know there was a handful of points, maybe half a dozen points along the ascent track. As we know, there's dozens of points along the track that we actually have to monitor, and along those points, we're looking at waves, lightning, winds, all these sorts of important metrics, and a handful of those points that were looking no-go have now trending towards go, to coming below that threshold, particularly wind, which is a key factor. But that's the most detail I can give you right now, and I'm sure we'll have more as we move along.
Great. We'll take one more question from the phone bridge, and that is going to be Joey Roulette.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. I'm in a car, so sorry if it's hard to hear. And I'm with Irene Klotz from Aviation Week. First question for anyone who can answer. What's the latest you can launch before you have to stand down?
¿Qué es lo más tarde que pueden lanzar?
And is shortening the mission an option? And then for Benji or for anyone else, for SpaceX, is there anything different about operations for Falcon 9 Crew Dragon missions because of SLS being on the launch pad next door? Thanks.
I'll take the first part of that. So there are a lot of factors and a lot of things that we're still working to assess to really understand what the overall launch campaign looks like. So just to share with you the challenges, if I look out in the May timeframe, third week of May, where we were planning to do the OFT2 mission, the top goal is we want to be done with, we'd like to complete the Axiom mission in that window, the Crew 4 and Crew 3 handover, and then bring Crew 3 home. And so if you kind of back up from that, there is a high beta regime in there. We can't undock in that area. It's a little more challenging for us from a power standpoint, but we have some capability there that we're looking at. But if I work the problem backwards, I've got to have enough attempts to get Crew 3 home. I want to do the Crew 4, Crew 3 handover, and then I want enough runway and window to get Crew 4 up there. That's very high priority for us. So we're still working through that to really understand a handful of those variables, including another Russian EVA that
Bueno, en respecto a la pregunta, dice que aparte han estado evaluando todas las variables que tienen, no solo Artemis, sino que tienen otra tripulación más, la de Crew 4, la actividad de caminata espacial de Rusia. Tenemos un calendario muy ocupado de acá a fin de mes y lo del próximo mes que viene, ¿no?
Thank you, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thanks for doing this, and good luck. I think it's real exciting to have a commercial private mission. So Derek, my question is for you. Look to the future with Axiom. You mentioned one module. You're going to do a couple. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the capabilities and the functions and the purposes of your module, especially
las capacidades justamente sobre el módulo nuevo que va a llevar Axiom. Y la propulsión.
We may need a backup propulsion. And will you provide that at all?
Si van a ponerle propulsión
Sure.
ustedes.
So as I mentioned, the first module, which is a habitation module, gets launched in late 2024, and that will support, in terms of ECLIS and power and thermal, that will support 4 crew members. And one of the real positives from my perspective about our model, which is to connect to ISS first, is that we have kind of a fallback in terms of tremendous capabilities if we encounter something unexpected. If we have a failure that we don't expect, you know, our ISS friends via power flow through, thermal flow through, can help us kind of weather the storm, if you will, and continue with the program. So one of the things when I was actually considering coming to Axiom, looking at the overall concept, that very much appealed to me. So the capability will grow over time. About 6 months later, we'll launch a second habitation module that will look very much like that, the first module. Alenia Aerospace is building our structures, which you may know built a number of the ISS structures. So there's great experience there. And
bueno, dice que después del primer módulo, 6 meses después van a lanzar un segundo. Dice que Alenia, quien nos está construyendo, que ha construido los módulos de la Estación Espacial.
And then ultimately we have a power and thermal module, which has dedicated heat rejection, heat collection, thermal heat collection.
Y ahí van a tener equipos para generar potencia y para poder regular la temperatura.
ISS is in its lifetime, because when we deploy those arrays on that thermal and power module, they can impact the ISS arrays and their ability to generate power as well. So the timing of that, and we've got time to figure it out, but the timing of that is to be determined. So, and what we're doing now, we're focusing on the core systems, power, thermal, ECLIS, comet tracking, and we're interacting with industry to determine what research, payload, and science capabilities we need. As a basic capability, it's our intent to provide interfaces very similar, if not identical, to the ISS, because down the road we expect to transition a lot of those ISS customers from the ISS to the Axiom station in preparation for the ISS retirement. So we know that's in the baseline, but the rest of it is kind of up to us and industry to determine, and we've just started those discussions.
Bueno, no contestó en realidad la pregunta, ¿no? Lo que han dicho que ha trabajado mucho y están trabajando en el módulo de energía y en base a las necesidades de la industria.
Yeah, the phasing is interesting, or the time between the launch and the actual docking, and that varies day by day. So generally, if you delay, well, it really is dependent on the day. It's sometimes with the phasing, you will dock on the same day, and we can get you the details of that.
Rachel Crane? Wait for this.
Rachel Crane from CNN. With all the talk of the future space station, I'm curious to know what the transportation arrangements will be. We know right now that Station and NASA, they're supporting 2 private missions per year. What are those? How is that going to change, and how are those conversations going?
So in the short term, we have an agreement in place with SpaceX for the next 4 commercial flights to the
Ya tenemos un acuerdo por las próximas 4 lanzamientos,
as we go
o sea,
forward,
nuestras 4 próximas misiones.
mentioned OFT2.
Preguntó cómo iban a impactar también
esas
esas misiones a la Estación Espacial.
As well. So, there'll be options in competition. And the other thing that Axiom needs to address going forward is cargo and resupply.
Y otra de las cosas que tenemos que preocuparnos es de la carga y suministros.
Providers of that as well. So Angela talked a little bit about the commercial ecosystem, and the human part of it is just one aspect. The cargo part of it, too, is expanding significantly over time. So we've got the next 4 flights set. We're going to negotiate those flights with NASA, and we hope that they'll continue that partnership with us. But we've got contracts in place with SpaceX.
Dice que los próximos 4 vuelos
going
ya
forward,
son
we're going to look at all the options. The Boeing option for crew transportation.
Y estamos mirando también las opciones de Boeing, obviamente.
Thank you. We're going to go on the line to a question from Carrie Sanders.
Thank you. This is Kerry Sanders from NBC News. I think you've answered this question, but I'm speaking to a very general audience, and so I asked somebody to address it again. If they're not space tourists, can you explain the difference of what these members of the crew are?
Sure, it's a little bit of a subtle nuance, but when I make the distinction, I think about
¿Cómo hacen la distinción entre turistas o
their
miembros de
mission
tripulación?
plan. And for the individuals that we're flying on AX-1, they all have meaningful research that's connected to things that either have
Ahí está Darien,
been
ahí
done
está Darien,
before on
acá.
ISS and we're continuing,
Justo
or
ahí,
areas of
ahí,
interest
ahí
to
se ve el
them.
gorro de Darien.
And one thing in particular is aging and how the environment of space can be used to address that. Heart health is another thing that one of our crew members is assisting in the investigation of. Stem cell research as well is in one of the suite of payloads and science that our crew will be doing. So it was important to us that we build a very specific mission timeline that was tailored to their interests on the ground and the relationships that they have with various entities and institutions, and also that kind of open up the capability of the ISS. And Dana mentioned this previously, but there's opportunities out there that don't have a way to get to ISS, and
Puede que no
what
tenga
we're
la
doing with
oportunidad
private
también.
astronaut missions kind of opens up those opportunities. So I would say the distinction is that our guys aren't going up there and floating around for 8 days taking pictures and looking out of the cupola. I mean, we have a very intensive and research-oriented timeline planned for them, and it's significant. We think they're going to be very busy, and if there are issues, we've got the right ground team on the ground to help them with that. But the word is ambitious, I would say. We've got an ambitious timeline for each of our crew members that involves real research that is going to
Nuestra agenda, dice, para nuestros tripulantes es muy, muy ambiciosa, dice, ¿no?
We're going to take one more question from the phone bridge. Ed Ludlow from Bloomberg.
Hey guys, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Bueno, Bloomberg está preguntando
Benji,
ahora.
this one's for you. Similar question to what
No hay más
NASA's been dealing
preguntas
with recently with all the
telefónicas,
traffic on the
así que
range. You know,
vamos a
SpaceX
hacer algo.
also has a lot.
Nos desconectamos y vamos a poner el audio de original, o sea, no tenemos la oportunidad
We're going to
de
take one more
preguntar.
question from the phone bridge. Ed Ludlow from Bloomberg.
Hey guys, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Benji, this one's for you. Similar question to what NASA's been dealing with recently with all the traffic on the range. You know, SpaceX also has a lot going on at one time, including the moving goalposts for Crew 4. Could you just explain a little bit how the preparation for Axiom, you know, the Falcon, the Dragon capsule, how you manage that alongside the roster of other Falcon boosters that you have for other missions? And, you know, is it sort of disruptive to those other projects, or is it complementary into the work that your teams are doing on an ongoing basis?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. Complementary is a good word, and partnership is another one. We work closely together with NASA. I think Dana may have mentioned it, but our launch chiefs work with, for example, the SLS launch chiefs as they look at the SLS operations. You know, we've talked a little bit about competition, and Derek was talking about cargo and crew providers. We're a big believer in competition. We're a big believer in having an ecosystem and lots of people working together. So in order to do that, you have to plan and have great communication and great partnerships. So as we move ahead, we make sure that we're not stepping on each other. We're not getting in each other's way. It's a competition to have lots of providers, but it's not a competition to get people safely to space or get cargo safely to space. The point is to let's have us all be successful. And so that comes down to communication and trust and partnership and transparency, a big one. We all work very much towards transparency of what are the needs and how do we solve the problems, right? It's a very data-based approach. In terms of our own preparations, you know, SpaceX, on one hand, it always seems like, wow, we've come a long way really fast. But on the other hand, it's been a number of years, right? And we have a lot of folks
Dice, por
that
un lado,
work very hard, a lot
dice,
of very smart people who
hablando de
work hard
SpaceX,
to
dice,
have
bueno, parece que
evolved
llegamos muy rápido,
where
dice,
we
pero sin
are
embargo,
and the number of launches
hace
that we
muchos
do.
años que
You know, in the about 11 years that
en
I've been
realidad
at the
20,
company,
¿no?
I've seen that evolution. And we do the same thing, right? The important thing is to do repeatable work in the right way to do it.
Hacemos el mismo
The data
trabajo
indicates that you should do
siempre,
it
y
and constantly learn how to
importante
make
es
things
hacer
more
siempre el
efficient
mismo
and safer at
trabajo
the same
y
time.
más
So we
eficientemente
prepare our
y
rockets
los
in the
datos
same way, whether we're launching one this week or two, or
lo
one
reafirman.
this month or 4 or 5 this month. Same thing with the Dragons, right? And we have multiple facilities where these are being prepped, and then they're brought, to the main hangar at the launch site to be ready to go. So it's not about, we've got to do something very different. It's actually not the goal. The goal is to do what works, do it right, and just have more capability to do that thing that works, and that's what we do.
Nuestro meta es hacer nuestro trabajo
Come
eficientemente.
from Will from News 13.
Es hacer bien el trabajo, mejorarlo y poder
Camera.
hacer más.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. This one is for Derek Hassmann. Looking forward to once Axiom starts flying its own modules, will EVAs be a part of that plan? And if so, what might that look like as far as the work that they'd be doing? And I guess follow along for Angela Hart, could that potentially happen on the ISS side as opposed to connected to the Axiom module itself? Thanks.
Okay, so I described our assembly sequence quickly, but it's a HAB1, HAB2 research module, and then what I refer to as the power and thermal module. One other capability in that power thermal module is an airlock capability. That's our current
Está hablando de los módulos que están pensados en
we
colocar
will have the capability to do spacewalks
Axiom.
independently using the Axiom station.
Entonces dice que el tercer módulo que tienen pensado llevar, el módulo de potencia, también tiene previsto un airlock, o sea que le permite salir al espacio sin utilizar las instalaciones de la Estación Espacial.
We're currently not planning to do NASA EVAs through the Axiom segment, and I can let Dana add more to that.
No
But there
están
has been a lot
planificando
of
hacer
questions
caminatas
leading up to
espaciales
that
en el
about
módulo de
EVA
Axiom,
capability, and
la NASA.
seems to be a lot of interest in the private sector to be able to conduct EVAs, and so we'll continue to watch that. And as the commercial capability related to EVAs expands, evaluate how and what can be done on station, and then how NASA is going to be able to use that capability as well. And so a lot of those are open questions. As I said, we're going to learn a lot as this evolves and figure out the best
seguramente
way for
vamos
us to use that.
estamos
Those
abiertos a
capabilities,
todo eso
we're
porque
really
vamos a
looking to
aprender
commercialize
seguramente de
LEO.
lo
We
que
already, NASA just put
la
out
parte
a commercial
comercial quiere hacer,
EVA
que quieren hacer
contract,
caminatas
that leads into
espaciales,
that as well.
obviamente.
So there's a lot of different pieces to that, and I'll let Dana talk the specifics related to station itself.
Yeah, there are a few other kind of unique considerations when you look at what it takes to do a spacewalk. I mean, one of them is the suit and the vehicle itself, speaking specifically to the airlock. They're really one big integrated system, and so you can't swap and interchange suits into different airlocks, and so part of it depends what suit is NASA using, what suit did our crew train in, what suit is Axiom using at the time, so there's a lot of kind of unique aspects. Spacewalks are dangerous. They will continue to be dangerous. You're more exposed in an environment in general. The level of redundancy
los trajes no son intercambiables de sitio, ¿no? Porque están hechos específicamente para eso. Y el entrenamiento también, dice, y las camionetas espaciales son riesgosas.
The other aspect is the suit and the suit's capabilities are very much tied to the outside of the vehicle and what you need to do the spacewalk.
Y nuestras capacidades de trajes espaciales están enfocadas a lo que necesitamos hacer fuera del vehículo.
The boot is specifically designed to fit in the foot restraint, and so there are really a lot of interdependencies. So it kind of gets complicated when you look at it. So
por ejemplo,
be
estaba
happy
hablando
to
que
have more
la parte de la
capability in
bota
all
del
those areas
traje
and
está
have those
pensada
discussions, but
para que
we
calce
just don't know enough
justo
at this point.
en el aparato que tienen para poder
Thank you.
pararse
And with
afuera,
that,
por
that was
ejemplo,
our
¿no?
last question. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward for you to participate and join in the launch. It is scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, April 8th. Launch is at 11:17. Please join us on the webcast. It starts at
Bueno, están finalizando
7:50
la conferencia de prensa. Vamos a ver si podemos
So
tener
tune in to
una comunicación
axiomspace.com
con
and go
Darian.
AX1. Thank you.
Bueno. Vamos a ver si podemos tener una comunicación en el momento con Darian. Vamos a bajar un poquito el volumen porque generalmente Skype arranca con muchísimo volumen la llamada, el tono de llamada. A ver si nos contesta. No. Alguien dijo que iba a ver si podía inclusive hacer alguna entrevista ahora ahí. Quizás está en eso. Vamos a ver. No, acaba de terminar. Por eso lo estoy llamando.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message.
Wow, esto nos muestra cómo está el tiempo. Está lloviendo. Está feazo el tiempo. Bueno, en realidad lo interesante de esto es que está todo pronto para el lanzamiento para mañana. Las preguntas, hubo una pregunta muy interesante de que, bueno, ya vemos que Axiom viene con todo. Tenemos un cartel ahí de Darian que no corresponde. Vamos a ver si lo sacamos. No debería estar ese cartel de la voz de Darian. En off. No debería decirlo porque no lo tenemos en off, lamentablemente. Estaba previsto que quizás entrara. Ah, ahora sí. Bueno. Ops, Darian. Hola. Estoy tratando de ponerte en el directo. Ahora sí. Estás en el directo.
Hola, Dani. Saludos.
Bueno, te vimos ahí muy de refilón cuando mostró la cámara un poquito. Apareció tu gorro. Por suerte ese gorro es bastante grande y se vio un poco. Contame.
Bueno, continúa la lluvia aquí primero. Como puedes ver, no como hace unas 2 horas, pero parece que según la conferencia el tiempo va a mejorar, lo que es buena señal. Muy interesantes las preguntas que se hicieron. No tuve tiempo a preguntar la pregunta que me mandaste sobre el tiempo en que si esperan reducir el tiempo en que la cápsula para la teniendo en cuenta qué tan costoso es,
sí.
¿verdad? Pero no, y cuando salimos ahora, podía hacer a preguntarle algo y fuera de la conferencia no estaba permitido tampoco.
Claro.
Así que ni me molesté en preguntar. Pero es una buena pregunta para el futuro. Aquí seguimos. Les voy a enseñar rapidito. Ahí está. Acá está. Justo acá. Está el vehículo. No está lloviendo mucho ahora, solo algunas lloviznas. Y listo para mañana. Voy a tratar de ver si hay algún material disponible dentro del sitio de prensa ahora y ver si tienen algo también de comer porque no he almorzado. Pero todo bien.
Café y galletitas generalmente hay en el sitio de prensa, así que
sí.
seguramente lo puedes ver.
Y
No sale cortado.
Hello.
Ahora sí.
Sí, le decía que ver si puedo comer algo acá y luego preparar para mañana.
Ok. Buenísimo. Nos quedamos sin la imagen de la cámara del SLS. Se ve que la lluvia les debe haber afectado también. Se nota que hay un viento bárbaro. Se escucha.
Sí, hay bastante viento, sí.
Bueno, Darien, muchísimas gracias. Nos hablamos ahora en un rato, cerramos este streaming y luego en todo caso comentamos mañana más sobre lo que habías escuchado ahora en la conferencia de prensa. ¿Te parece?
Ok, me parece bien. Gracias.
Un abrazo y gracias.
Un abrazo. Chao.
Bueno, ese era Darien Hernández del canal Explorando el Espacio. Voy a leer las últimas preguntas y nos vamos. Vemos que la cámara, se le cayó la cámara. O sea, dejó de andar la cámara que tienen puesta en el cohete SLS. Sí, la grabación en directo no está disponible. Se les cayó la cámara. A ver si hay alguien más que tenga una cámara. No veo ninguna cámara más ahora. Bueno, no importa. Lo importante de esto es que Darien estaba allí en la conferencia de prensa. Vamos a tener más novedades. Mañana temprano vamos a estar transmitiendo. Empezamos, no está programada todavía, pero sí está en el canal de Darien. Pueden tenerla como guía. Suscríbanse al canal y activen todas las notificaciones para estar al tanto de nuestras transmisiones. Gracias enormes por haber estado aquí siguiéndonos. Voy a leer los mensajes, paso a leer los mensajes. Los últimos. Albert de la Fuente, gracias Darien. Cuando estuve en el rollout, dice Free Range Brain, nos dijeron de llevar nuestra comida porque allí no hay nada para la prensa. Enséñanos el mural de la derecha. Sí, uy, qué lástima, sí, estaba precioso, lo vi, ¿no? Estoy agotado, dice Adrián Braga. Bueno, sí, estamos todos cansados también. Pero mañana es un día increíble. Tempranito vamos a estar transmitiendo. Nos vemos. Un abrazo.